Legal analyst Mpumelelo Zikalala joins us now for more. Thank you so much for joining us. Always good to talk to you. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for hosting me, and good evening to your viewers.
All right, let's start, even before we look at who's going to sit on this panel. For some of us who perhaps don't follow the law and understand how these things work, how is it that we've got to a point where an independent panel that could possibly be constituted by judges is sitting trying to figure out whether the president has a case to answer before Parliament? Is this not something that the Parliament could have decided all by itself?
You are quite correct, which is the reason why we have something which is called the separation of powers. Parliament must then use its own experts, it's the members of Parliament themselves, if they are available, and all the resources which are within their disposal to then say, we want to deal with parliamentary issues ourselves, so that at the end of the day, the judiciary can then play its oversight role, whether you've complied with it or not. Something we should then support Parliament in doing that is the Judicial Service Commission's Act and regulations, and the Code of Conduct that regulates how judges are supposed to act. I wouldn't say outlaws, but frowns upon active judges and somewhat judges that are not active in service, acting in instances where the independence of the judiciary is going to be impaired, either from the side of the public or any other independent person looking into those proceedings which are taking place, or in instances where the separation of powers principles are going to be impaired. In this case, you have judges, I wouldn't say meddling, but playing a very active role in parliamentary processes that may, at the end of the day, be decided by the judiciary whether they've been presided over accurately or not. That's the problem in which we are going to find, in which if you take active judges, for example, those active judges cannot then preside over the same matters if either of the parties are unhappy with the decision which has been taken by this particular committee at a later stage. So it's much more advisable to choose a parliamentary committee which is not made up of any judges, which is made up of legal professionals, industry experts who are going to be able to come back with clear descriptions or clear lines in terms of saying, Mr. President, you are correct or you are wrong in doing this particular thing. And if it needs be, if the matter goes within the realm of the judiciary, let them be independent enough to decide on the matter without us as members of the public doubting whether are they really going to judge independently, second guessing a decision which has been taken by their former colleagues.
So what will they be assessing? Will they be assessing whether there's enough evidence to go ahead? They're not actually going to be deciding anything, I guess.
Yes, but in doing that, they are, in essence, providing a decision of guiltiness or innocence at the end of the day. They are going to say, here are the rules in which the president is supposed to be sticking to. The Constitution is very clear to the duties of the president. The Constitution is very clear to the independence and the president's allegiance to the constitutional provisions. Let's check whether on these facts which are presented to us, if the president has a case to answer. If the president does have a case to answer, then in what extent must those proceedings be handled in, and whether or not we can come to a conclusion to say that the president did indeed act in a manner which contravenes any provisions of the Constitution or any provisions of any applicable legislation or even common law. So they are going to play a very important task of being, for a lack of a better word, investigating officers who are going to gather the information which is required and then be able to assess and say, Mr. President, please answer based on these particular allegations. You play a very important role. Protect the office that you are presiding over by taking us into confidence that all these allegations are not true. If they are indeed true, what other appropriate action can be taken so that the status or the prestigeness of the president's office is protected at all times?
Who then does the impeaching? Because there's a majority party in Parliament that could close ranks.
That's the job of the parliamentarians, the people that were voted into Parliament, and the people who are currently serving within those benches in Parliament. Now, that's when we go back to ask, are members of Parliament supposed to vote based on their allegiance to the South African Constitution, meaning let that independent member of parliament that is there think what is in the best interest of South Africans, or do they walk into the parliamentary doors and say what is in the best interest of my party or the mandate which has been provided by my party based on the evidence that has been provided to me? Does it warrant that I impeach this particular president, even if it means going against my party lines? That's where we're going to go back to. We have been down this particular route before, and I think that's where we're heading now in terms of the manner in which the parliamentarians will have to vote. Of course, all of this could be saved if the president is found guilty of any misconduct or contravention of the Constitution. The president could then say, let me save you the heartache of voting against me. I'm the one who's going to step down as the president, and let me or allow me to deal with the things that I'm facing, the adverse findings that I'm facing at the moment. While I do that, appoint another person to act in my role, will be able to serve South Africans without any dark clouds over their head.
All right, so once this panel kicks off, they have a finding and they decide, Mr. President, there are things that you erred and you went on the wrong side of the constitutional duties that you have. Does that mean all the other legal processes get thrown out, or he just gets thrown out of Parliament? I mean, out of his job?
No, not at all. Not at all. Firstly, he does have a right to say, I want to take a decision on review. You're a panel which has an impact on a number of lives and in the manner in which I'm doing my job as the president. If there are certain things which did not go well or in line procedurally, the most important one would be the rules of natural justice. Was he given an adequate opportunity to state his view? Was he given enough opportunity to air his evidence? Was it presided over or adjudicated properly? So he can take that matter to court and say, Honorable Court, please defend me. I need you to come to my corner here. There are certain things which have not gone in a proper manner. Can you please make sure that you set aside the decision that has been taken by this review panel? Which is why it's important, by the way, that don't take active judges who are in active duty to sit in this panel, because what you are then doing, you are weakening all the other divisions that you would have taken those judges from, and you're also weakening the independence of the judiciary that must always be protected at all times. The second thing that the president can do, if he accepts this particular conclusion, then the matter must go to Parliament so that Parliament votes on it. There are various provisions within our constitutions where motions of no confidence can then be taken against the president, or the president himself can then say, I'm resigning as the president of South Africa. I'm allowing or saving you the heartache of having you to vote me out. I do realize and accept the recommendations of this particular panel. Allow an acting president to come in to make sure that the active duties in line with the constitution of the president are done in a proper manner, and the integrity of the office in which I serve is then protected.
All right, perhaps as a final and quick question, let's assume the panel says the president has failed the country. The ANC close ranks and say, thank you for that, but actually we do want to keep him. Does the public have any recourse? Because the evidence would have been laid bare and he would have been found wanting. Parliament will have a majority party that decides, actually, we're going to keep him regardless. Where does that leave the citizens of South Africa?
Yeah, I would say if we're to place it on a broader perspective, the citizens can then go to court and say, in terms of making sure that whatever decision which is taken by decision makers, in this case Parliament, is lawful, reasonable, and procedurally fair, we are not happy with the instances of reasonableness. The decision that has been taken does not coincide with the decision that has been taken at the end of the day. If a person presents to you an individual that can engage in instances of misconduct, it doesn't make any reasonable sense or rationality that you are going to say that that person must still occupy that particular office, even though you have clear evidence that they did not comply with the law. I know it would be too far-fetched in order for maybe any members of the public to go to court on that one, but there are NGOs that can go to court and say to the court, can you please review and set aside the decision of Parliament? They failed in exercising their duties. They did not apply their rational minds in taking this particular decision based on the facts that have been provided to them. So the only recourse in which anyone who finds themselves in an adverse finding or find themselves with undesirable results can go to the courts, which is why I would repeat again the importance of not taking active judges to sit in this panel, the importance of not taking retired judges to sit in this particular panel, to ensure that you protect the integrity of the judiciary of all times, but most importantly, instill the separation of powers in the various governance structures.
All right, and I think that's a good point that we can leave this discussion. Always great talking to you. Thanks so much indeed for your time as always.